8 months after the Easter attacks, the deadliest terror attacks in Sri Lanka in a decade, there is an election. Sri Lankans will vote to pick a new president tomorrow. And this is an election like never before. Economy, national security, polarization on religious lines, unrealistic promises, even fake news. This election has ignited a variety of debates in the island nation. Let's break it down to a few questions. Who are the key contenders? There are two. Both come from political families. Nandasena Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Sajith Premadasa. Gotabaya is a former defense secretary and the younger brother of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. He belongs to the party called the SLPP. He's had a controversial political career, accusations of human rights violations in the war against the LTT, which he led. He has openly threatened the media in the past and he faces a corruption case, the full package as it were. His adversary, another political royalty, Sajith Premadasa, is the only son of former President Ranasinghe Premadasa. Sajith belongs to United National Party. He is the candidate of the UNF alliance. He is currently the Housing Minister of Sri Lanka. Now let me give you some numbers. Sri Lanka has 16 million voters. The election has 35 candidates. The candidate who gets more than 50% of the votes will become president. But what happens if none of them gets 50%? The voters in Sri Lanka are allowed to choose their top 3 candidates in the order of preference. If there is no clear mandate, the candidate who secures the most preference votes becomes the president. It has never happened in the past. Sri Lanka tends to give a clear mandate. Now let's talk about the key issues. Gotabaya Rajapaksa is pitching national security as the big one. He has promised a complete overhaul of security to prevent attacks like the Easter bombings. Premadasa, on the other hand, is running on welfare promises. Free housing, increased spending on education and healthcare, and gender equality. That's what he's selling. Gotabaya's support base is conservative Sinhalese Buddhists. Premadasa is backed by liberal Buddhists and the minority community, the Tamils and the Muslims. But remember, the Sinhalese Buddhists account for 70% of Sri Lanka's population. They decide the elections. So Gotabaya has a clear edge. Now what's in it for India? Indian Tamils account for over 4% of the Sri Lankan population. This is according to the 2011 census of Sri Lanka. The overall Indian diaspora population is roughly around 5%, and that is a significant population. In an election where majority votes will be split, the minority votes could well be the decider. So which of these two candidates suits India more? Interesting question, even if I say so myself. The Tamil voters in northern Sri Lanka, be it in Jaffna or Kilinochchi, will certainly want Sajith Premadasa. They view Gotabaya Rajapaksa as the person who instigated violence on civilians at the end of the civil war. The Tamil community did not get the political solution that was promised to them after the end of the LTTE. But what suits the Tamil voters in Sri Lanka may not always suit the government of India. The Easter terror attacks exposed the fault lines in Sri Lanka's security. There was a lot that was wrong. Obviously, Gotabaya Rajapaksa would be a good fit. He can bolster security. That has been his calling card. But the party headed by his brother, Mahinda Rajapaksa, was the party that allowed China's naval entry into Sri Lanka, the party behind the Hambantota port deal. That port, by the way, was called the Magampura Mahinda Rajapaksa port. It was Rajapaksa who allowed Chinese influence on Lankan soil. And that's what Gotabaya brings to the table. Better security on one hand, but Chinese naval domination in Sri Lanka on the other. As for Sajith Premadasa, he gets support from all communities. His party chief and Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe is more friendly with India and the Western world. Premadasa then is expected to balance ties with India, China and the West. But he doesn't have a great track record on security. That's the bargain. India has always had strong relations with Sri Lanka, and that has improved in recent years. Tourism from India is extremely important for the Lankans. The two countries also share strong trade ties, and irrespective of what result this election throws up, most of this will continue. So who's ahead? What are the opinion polls saying? There are no opinion polls. Analysts say that this is as close an election as it can get. Gotabaya had an advantage, but Premadasa seems to have covered that with his welfare promises. It's a straight shootout. By Monday morning, we'll know the result, and with it, the future of India's Indian Ocean strategy.